Hello and welcome to the Temple of Tomes with your host Indie Comics Jones. Today's December 20th, 2021. This is episode 451 and we're going to talk about the comic Out. It's been out for a while. This is an Awa Upshot, one of five. I don't know what issue they're on now. Probably 2 or 3. But I thought I'd take a look at it because it looked kind of interesting to me. Maybe on issue 4 at this point. Right now, I'm going to give this a recommend despite what I see as a lot of flaws. But I just kind of like this sort of genre, the Nazi supernatural experimental. Because we saw that with Raiders of the Lost Ark. We saw it with Overlord, the movie by J.J. Abrams. It came out a couple years ago, probably maybe 8 years ago now. And, where the Nazis are doing experiments on things, or they're trying to find some supernatural item to give them an up in the war. We had that also in Captain America with the super soldiers, things like that. This one is kind of the same ilk. And the art in it I really liked, and that's pretty much the only reason I'm really recommending it this time, because the story to me is a little discombobulated. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It feels like there's some pages missing from the script that I'm reading here, so you just kind of have to do the best what you can and draw your own conclusions as you read this thing, which is not always bad, but in this case it is a little bit of a struggle. So as you can see here, you've got a POW camp that we got going on. The cover is really nice. I'm sure they had other covers to choose from. This comes in at a whopping $3.99. I might mention that as well. It reads almost like a script, a movie script that is missing pages. I don't know if we're going to see who worked on this book. Well, we've got Rob Williams as the writer, Will Conrad is the artist, and Marco Lesko is the colorist, I believe. I believe that's our... Well, we'll make sure later on when the credits do show up. We start off at the Czechoslovakian border. We have some prisoners. So this took me a little while to figure out what was going on. If they were digging this up or burying it, I wasn't quite sure. Just the way they were doing it, that was drawn here, but I do believe they're digging it up for some reason. But as they're digging it up, the Nazi guards are watching over these POWs. These POWs appear to be Czechoslovakian in nature. And so this guy in here, I think he might be someone that you want to pay attention to in this book. As you can see, his face keeps appearing in these first pages. You see some kind of glyphs on here, some ancient writing on the thing, and as they're finished, the Commandant Luden, who shows up later in the book in the story, just says go ahead and shoot them, and they are all shot right on the site there, and they fall onto this what appears to be some big casket or grave. I'm not sure. It's not really made clear at this point. And their blood seeps out into the carvings on the casket itself. Then we got this kind of nice cutaway from this S cut in the coffin to this S cut in the mountains, and we've got this rumbling of vehicles heading out. And it's a bunch of POWs. You got your two guys sitting in the back, and they're watching all these different POWs here. They're British and American, and it doesn't. I had a little trouble making sense of it because on this shot it looks like I don't know. It looks like these guards are sitting at the back of the tailgate. And then on this shot, it looks like this guy's sitting in the back of the tailgate. So it was a little disorienting as I'm reading this, or looking at it, I should say. And then I guess you get a better orientation on this one. But they're kind of shunning this guy. He's a Comanche, and it doesn't make sense why he is. And then also they say that he's one of the Windtalkers. Now, if you're familiar with the story of the Windtalkers, they were Navajo and Comanche and some other tribes from the U.S. that would speak in command, speak their native tongue over the communications lines. The Axis forces, that would be the Japanese, Italian, Germans, couldn't understand that language. They had no clue, and so they were pretty much able to just go ahead and speak the language and not be detected what their messages were. It was undecipherable. So we've got, but the thing is that those wind talkers were used, as far as I can tell, were used only in the Pacific theater, not in the European theater. So he's a little out of place, and they make him out to kind of be a super Comanche because apparently he knows all these different languages. It's never really pointed out why he knows so many languages, but he just does, and he just doesn't get along with anybody, even the British, who I think somebody would be taking his side. They think he's a spy because he has talked to the Germans. He knows German. Obviously, he knows a bunch of different languages. So they come up to this castle up in the mountains. They have one guy freaking out. He's gonna jump over the cliff, and he appears to be some kind of pastor or priest or something, or chaplain. The Comanche's able to talk him back in, settle him down. And they look like they're pretty cold here. Even the Germans aren't wearing a lot of snow gear, even though it appears to be snowing at this time. And they get to this castle up in the mountains there. I can't say what it's. Neuschwanstein Castle in Bavaria. Prisoner of war camp. So that's an odd place to have a prisoner of war camp. And then we get the what do you want to call it here? The credits for this. Rob Williams, the writer, Will Conrad, the artist, Mark Lesko, the colorist. I think we've seen Mark's stuff before in these reviews. Sal Cipriano, the letterer. I believe we've seen Cipriano as well. Tim Bradstreet did the cover art, and that's a little bit different than the interior, but the interior art is good as well. You can see some of the nice look on that cover art there. And then we have variant covers and so on and so on. All right. Let's move ahead. So they're inside this, they go inside this castle, and there's this remark like, look at this place, half the German army must be here, but they don't really show any German soldiers. Just showing mostly the prisoners here, and they're put in some barracks in the courtyard. And they start to introduce themselves a bit. They're also unload that casket, I guess, that was covered with blood or whatever it is. They don't really know what it is. The prisoners see it, and the guy just says, I don't recognize the writing on it. That's the Comanche. He seems to be able to tell any kind of language. It's never, like I said, it's kind of explained why he's such a super language guy. They see that they're making these strange arrangements throughout the castle. There's like, it's got a parabolic cone behind a cross for some reason, and it appears to be some kind of what would you call it? Some kind of like an amulet, a large amulet, trying to keep evil contained somehow. So you can just see these guys are all cold. They're milling around. They're put in Quonset huts. They're broken up. And they introduce themselves. Turns out there's an army engineer among them that has a lot of experience of breaking out of POW camps. Why they put him here, I don't know, but they do after knowing that fact. And the Germans talk about that they're losing the war, and this is the time to unleash this whatever it is. And like I said, it's really sketchy the way they do it. I love the art, though. So let me get in here. You can kind of see some of this. Just some really nice stuff. So I'm sticking with at least one more issue, and hopefully it'll clear a lot of things up. Do a little bit more backstory, perhaps, and a little more just regular story, putting things together. They're still mad at the Comanche. Someone actually attacks him later in this book for some reason. I think he talked to a German again, and he gets kind of flustered and leaves, but the meantime, they find out that they're actually had already started digging a tunnel beneath the Comanches' bunk. So they're mad that he thinks he's going to tell the Germans about it, and of course, he's not. But he just gets bugged anyway. He goes outside to catch some air. He hears some noises, I guess, and turns out one of the other guys, the engineer tunneler, shows up behind him, and they talk for a minute. And he keeps hearing a voice in Czechoslovakian, and suddenly he sees another figure. And this last page, I couldn't tell at first who was getting attacked, if it was the Comanche or the other guy. And I believe, because here's the Comanche again, I believe it's the other guy, the engineer, because of the cap. But it was kind of inconclusive to me. I was trying to go by the serial numbers on the shirts, but those aren't. This is the only time you really see one clear. So it's really tough to find out. And then he hears the Czechoslovakian word again. So I don't think it's the Comanche, the Windtalker, getting attacked. I think it's the engineer, this guy. But like I said, that there's not a lot of differentiation between that face and that face. So a little tough. I will go into the next issues. I'm hoping it will clear up. I'm hoping it will be a stronger storyline. War is hell, say hello to the devil. Like I said, it goes a lot along the same lines as some of those other creepy Nazi movies we've seen in the past, or that have elements of science experiments and supernatural. And I think this is supposed to be the supernatural side of it. We do get a little bit of exposition here. The artist, or I should say, I guess the artist and the writer talk about kind of using the look of certain people that have been in war movies before. And I know they talk about Charles Bronson. Maybe that looks a little like Harrison Ford there. Things like that. We get some upcoming scenes from the next issue. Actually, we've seen this one, so maybe that's how they started out. You see them tunneling underneath. So it wouldn't be a good thing if they're trying to contain this thing and there's a tunnel to let them out. And it looks like I don't know what's going on here. So we'll have to figure that out. As far as, it looks like that's where they placed the casket in a church, and it somehow went into or got out or something. So we'll figure that all out in the future. And we just get a lot of ads for other things that are moving along here. So it is a recommend, mostly because of the art. Very strong art throughout. The story, I think, needs to be tighter. It needs a little more explanation. I'm hoping for that in the second issue. Otherwise, it will turn into a not recommend. So thank you for stopping by and listening to this review of Out. As always, please like, please subscribe if you haven't. Please leave comments. We'll see you next time at the Temple of Tomes. This is Indie Comics Jones bidding you adieu.